Welcome to Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. And of course, good morning to the United States of America. Good morning to every nook and cranny receiving our 100,000 watt transmitter, one that is not paid for by the plutocracy, but paid for by you, our listening audience, those who want real data, those who want real information. Good morning to the rest of the world, those that are accessing us through the internet and are generally a great part of our great conversation in the chat and elsewhere. But before we get started, I trust you had a wonderful weekend. And I trust that my brothers in a studio have had, even if a wet morning, a great morning. Good morning to the geniuses in the studio.
Well, so far, so good. Our parking lot again is full of water.
And I didn't melt.
Yeah, and I was just, just as I come in, I usually see Jack's little car out there and went, oh, no, Jack. Then I thought, Jack is smart enough to park somewhere else. So he did.
Smarter than your average bear.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, speaking of smarter than your average bear, I think I cut you off, Egberto. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead, please.
Smarter than your average bear and more handsome than Cary Grant. Here is Jack with some thoughts.
Right.
I love it.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. Really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus. You're as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch. You're a bad bunch.
State Attorney Grinch is a mean one, Mr. Paxton. Anytime anyone wants to do something good for the citizens, especially in Harris County, our state Grinch says no to giving $500 federal dollars to poor families each month to see how they will benefit from more access to food, education, and health. It's not even state money, it's federal money, and he's blocking it from the people. So I thought the song was appropriate.
You're a vile one, Mr. Grinch.
I love it. I love it.
Your smile, you have all the sweetness of a sea crocodile, Mr. Grinch.
Mr. Grinch. Listen, let me tell you. You know, it is shameful for real, Jack. I mean, the fact that $500 a month, but first we have to talk to our audience, the people, the average American citizen, because a lot of folks that get out there and work every day and they struggle or whatever, they hear, I think it's like 1,900 people receiving $500 a month, again from the federal grant, etc. And people, we have taught people. If you listen to a lot of our conservative Republican politicians, we have taught people that any kind of assistance provided to some is somehow a negative thing. These are people on the dole. They're not doing their part, etc. All of these things were placed in our minds by the Powell memo. It instructed us to get that frame of mind of being the individualist that supposedly pull ourselves from our bootstrap and all that good stuff. And it's a false thing that have us pitted against the poor many a times. Why don't they go out there and get a job? Why giving them free money? Before I go there, and thanks, Jack, because I like to talk about this stuff. So thank you again, Jack, as usual. Here's the thing, folks. The biggest subsidy, the biggest dole, the biggest folks on the dole in this country are corporations. And the biggest, and look, let me tell you, and this is not, whenever I talk about, we have millions of people working for corporations. Millions. Please, whenever I speak about the corporate state or corporations, understand that we are in a system that we all have to change, and we should hold nothing against the corporate employee, etc. That's not what it's all about. What we are talking about is having to have systemic change. Systemic change meaning things need to change where it is more now biased towards the employee. It is not where it is biased towards people. It is not. The first thing we ever ask about, whenever we do any kind of policy, how is that going to affect business? What is that going to do for the taxes on a certain group of folks? So let me take that out of the way. So I am not talking about my brothers and sisters working for corporations. That's what we do. That's how the system has been set up wrongly, but that's how it's been set up. Now, when it comes to the biggest people on the dole, the ones that take all our monies, our taxes, etc., it is not that $500 that we're giving to a select few people to try to give them a hand up. It's those that are getting subsidies for drilling. People say sometimes you hit the oil companies, and a lot of people who work for the oil companies sometimes take that personally, as if they think we're hitting them up personally. We're not. But let's just give an example here. We live in America. We're not going to talk about our origin, but let's talk about today. We live in America. America has hundreds, millions of acres of public land. In other words, land that the government owns. It's not in the private hands of anybody. And by the way, this argument should be made for the private lands as well. Now, nobody put oil in the ground, carbon in the ground, iridium in the ground, or all these natural resources in the ground. But let's just start on private property. We have given a select group of people the ability to mine our public lands and pay a pittance, maybe a tad bit of a royalty, a tiny, tiny bit of royalty to the federal government. But then the select few who are able to invest in those companies, when they hit their oil, all those spoils, the constancy in profits. Remember, you've spent a lot of money to find the oil, but when you find the oil, it's a free for all because it's coming out of the ground free, minus the cost of delivery, minus the cost of research and development, etc. But the amount of oil that's coming out of the ground is a humongous amount, and it makes people profits. And by the way, you don't have to take my word for it. You just have to read their balance sheets and see the buildings that they build. In other words, they change their assets into buildings. They change your assets into other investments in other companies, etc. That is monies that all came out of the ground that belongs to all of us as Americans. And if we then ask these guys to pay a bit more taxes, if we ask these guys to make life a bit better for their employees, for the people of America, they squawk. Oh my God, you're taxing us. Now we have received all this free money out of that we have pretty much legally stolen from the American people, public land, but we balk when they ask for a bit more money to make life a bit better for the people. We inflate their costs, not inflation, but corporate greed rate, the corporate greed rate. We increase and then instead of we the people, government telling corporations, stop it or we'll tax it back out of you. In other words, if you overcharge people, we compare what your a profit is supposed to be or what it should be, not excessive. Instead of saying to the companies, all right, if you guys want to raise prices, keep raising prices. We'll just tax it back out of you and redistribute it right back to the people you forced to pay those excessive costs. We don't say that. It's always you, the person that's listening to me, my brothers and my sisters, who many a times have been indoctrinated by the Powell Manifesto by not understanding your worth and your work. What do we say? Oh, the feds come in and then they say, raise interest rates to cool down the economy. In other words, to lay people off so that people would start buying more and convince the corporations to lower their prices or stop raising their prices. It's an insane concept that we have been led to accept. An insane concept. And the pretext we use is let the market decide. No, the market is not what's deciding anything. That is the biggest farce there is. There ain't no market. It's funny. On 60 Minutes last week, they asked the Commerce Secretary, why is America investing in the chip manufacturers to come back to the United States of America? And why are you forcing the corporations who are going to use these resources to buy more American and make it that Americans get the benefits of these tax dollars that are used to build these to reinvest in these corporations back in the States? And by the way, the government's going to invest in building these expensive chip companies in the United States. And guess what? We are not going to get a return on the dollar. The Intels and the Nvidias and all these other companies, their stock prices are going to go through the roof because they're building now in America. And you know what? Since they got all that influx from the government, their stock price go up. You get nothing. The taxpayer, nothing. And they want you. So this was the best part of the interview that very few people I thought even noticed. Leslie Stahl looked at the Commerce Secretary. I can't remember her name, but I fell in love with her immediately. She asked the Commerce Secretary, shouldn't the market be deciding where these people buy these things or how they spend this money? Isn't the market a better thing to do it? And the Secretary of Commerce smiled. She smirked. She said nothing. And she did it on purpose because Leslie Stahl saw it. And Leslie Stahl said, you smirked. You smirked. And she said, how good has the market worked so far? The government had to come in and stop them from building their, or start having them build their chips in America. Because you know what? Building your chips in Taiwan, where there is friction between China and Taiwan, puts us at risk. Why? If something happens, supply chain, remember the pandemic? We are screwed. These geniuses that we call the titans of the market, they are not looking out for anything they're not letting no market dictate. A market would have said, you don't put your eggs in one basket. We do. A market would have, a supposedly working market wouldn't have had the supply chain problem that we had during the pandemic. But they don't want to pay $500 to a few people. And these people would have spent that $500 right back into the Houston economy, increasing economic activity in Houston. But no. We don't want that. I don't, and this is not my subject today at all, but Jack always does this to me. Always does this to me. And I love you for it, Jack, because you make a better program. So what I'm saying, people, we have to wise up to how we've allowed a system to use us. We have to wise up to understand that there are a few psychopaths out there that are driving our economic system that then somehow makes us believe that it is them who create. It is us. The innovation doesn't come from the billionaire. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, they control just the strings. But the actual innovation comes from you and me. The intellect comes from you and me. The working with our hands comes from you and me. The success of this economy comes from you and me. The failures of these economies are directly a result of the bad choices made by these people we tend and want to revere, because we have been indoctrinated into believing that they are more than what they are. Folks, it is you that is great. Let's go to Harry. Come on in, Harry.
Hola, ¿cómo estás,
Estoy
hermano?
bien, corazón. Estoy bien. ¿Cómo estás, mi hermano?
Muy bien, muy bien, muy bien. El Professor Economics 101, Professor Egberto Willis. Jack, and good morning to Jack Van Dever and to Howard Reynolds. Jack Van Dever gets you thinking, Egberto. That's why you're always talking about how he changes the show for you, because you have those Hanyoses you have in that studio are thinkers. And that's what makes Politics Done Right so great and so good to listen to. As I said to you guys last week, love you guys. You get me thinking. You make me think about things. And I discuss these things with my brother Alan. And my brother Alan will call you guys a bit some more when he has things to say. Because I always try to get him to call you, because I like to hear what Alan has to say to you and think about it. But
Thank
anyway,
you,
right. You're welcome. I want to make 3 points. The first point, as far as Ken Paxton is concerned, he's a bad dude. He's crooked with all the bribes he did. And what people have to do is, I'll use the Mirror Politics Done Right label that he puts on Captain Reynolds' rap there in the studio. Get out there and vote. You got to vote Greg Abbott out in 2 years so you can get rid of that Ken Paxton. That's what you're going to have to do. And you got to get more progressives. And now the second point is what you were talking about with these oil companies and all that. They see that stuff as giveaways with the $500, and we going back into, and they squawk about being taxed a little bit. But if you want those things to happen, people, once again, you've got to vote in progressive-minded people that think like Senor El Professor Egberto Willies and Howard Reynolds and Jack Van Dever and myself. Well, that's the only way it's going to change. If you keep having if you keep voting neoliberal in people that have the neoliberal mindset as Democrats or Republicans, that's not going to change. Now, the third point I wanted to make was Ketanji Brown Jackson. Like I told you last week, when they played that thing, I was listening to it on the radio. I kind of fell asleep, and they recapped some of it. But then I heard something that she did also say, and they talked about it on the weekend. She said that if you put Donald Trump back in there, he's going to, and you get a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House, what Donald Trump is going to do is turn the Oval Office into a criminal enterprise, and we can't have that. So people, we've got to do what El Professor Egberto Willis is always talking about. We've got to get out there and vote, and then you just vote your conscience, and you vote, in my opinion, you vote the right people in. You know my feelings, why I'm voting for Dr. Cornel West, and I understand your feelings, Egberto, about the path to victory, and you're voting for Biden, the policy, and not Biden, the man. But there's just things about Joe Biden that my conscience won't allow me to vote for him. But people, if you don't want us to be in for a bad time, please do not vote Donald. Get out there and vote. If Donald Trump beats all this legal stuff that he's involved in, and like you said, Egberto, even if he does beat this stuff, he can still get elected. Or as you told Gonzalo last week when he asked you about the electors in the Electoral College, that the Republicans have 26 and the Democrats have 22. And we know if it goes to the House, the Republicans will put Donald Trump back in there. So people,
Harry,
you've got to get out there and vote. It's very important.
Thank you, my dear brother Harry. You have a wonderful rest of your day, and our audience have heard you. Thank you, brother. You have a great day. Okay.
Have a good day too. All three of you.
All right. Let's go to Donald. Come on in, Donald.
Good morning, Egberto. How are you?
Good morning, my brother. Talk to me.
Good. Just-in-time manufacturing worked really well during COVID. And the thing with our chips is we can't tell if we're getting good or bad chips. And it's about time, because if COVID showed us anything, during the time of a war, we will not have the war machine that we need to take care of the business we need to take care of.
I surely hope you were kidding when you said just-in-time inventory worked.
No, it doesn't work. Because
it doesn't. Oh, no. Okay. Sorry. I am sorry. I thought you said it worked. It does not work is what you're correct. It does not work. In fact, it was a one-time gain for corporations. I mean, it just shows you that they're not good thinkers. These people that we revere, they think about the quickest way to get $1 quarter to quarter, but they don't think things out long term, which talks about how smart are they really? Anyway, continue, my brother Donald.
This is the point. Lack of planning on your part is not an urgency on mine. That's the phrases that we have in the industry.
Right.
Project managers, everything else. It's just the way it works. And if you want to see success,
go ahead. No, you can go ahead, please.
When I went to Japan, the greatest compliment that I gave them when I was giving a speech to them was that the Deming management system works. They build their people from the ground up. They know their job. They're going to retire there, and they make a superior product, because that's the way the real world works. You don't lay people off. You keep them in the good or the bad times, and you invest in your people. That's how you create greatness. That's how come when you buy German machines, you buy Japanese machines, you pay for a quality in a system that's done right.
You nailed it. I mean, one of the other thing is you treat employees like human beings. You give them a social structure that means they don't have to sit. Think about that worker that is working with a sick wife or a sick child, and they have to be thinking about healthcare as they're designing a product, as they're doing their work. I mean, we don't see these. And that's why I said it's not like these executives are all that smart. They don't get that having a worried employee, an employee where their mind is somewhere else, it does no good. Then again, we make products that only last a few years, right? So.
We talked about it. Now, the thing with Jimmy last week is he is correct. There's not a lot, as he said, in the amount that he said, but there is, I believe, racist in both parties. The difference is the Republican Party, we don't like it, but this is America, and you can do what you want. You can be the biggest racist you want. I don't care if you're a Taliban and whatever else that you are. You can be a racist, and God bless you. Be the best you can be. But the thing is, I accept your view, but you better not act on it. That's the key. You can do whatever you want, but you better not act on it in the United States. And if your house was on fire, I would still go in there and rescue your family, knowing that you hate my guts, but I would make sure their safety's over everything. And I will still say good morning to you. But that's the difference. We don't push anybody out for their views or anything else, in my opinion.
No. Actually, no. Well, before you go, your opinion is great, and you open up another subject that I was going to discuss at some time, and you brought up the race issue, and I think, like I've said too many a times, race is the race issue in America is a tool. It's a very effective tool used by those who run the country. And by the way, folks, you think you know who run the country. You hear Bill Gates and you hear Elon Musk and you hear the flashy people. But they have a few $1 billion. But the composite nature of those who actually run this country, you don't even know their names. Let me just tell you guys that you don't know their names. They're the multiple billionaires that are around that don't say a word, but they're the ones pulling the strings.
Let me tell you, that's the whole thing. I don't think they're teaching business or economics in these colleges that are doing the protesting, because they're going to figure out real quick what they're going up against is the people that got the money. Now, I've dealt with old money for a long time. This money is ancient money. It's money you don't even know where it's at. I told you there's that orb out there that's worth this much, and everybody else has to always keep the value of that orb while all the other currencies go up and down. And that's not a theory. That's just a fact. It's called ancient money.
Yeah.
Old money in the U.S.
Let me tell you, you're right. But, that is the reason why we have this thing, Donald, about not, burning books and not wanting people to learn real history, etc. That is the reason why. And that is what we have to get around. That is why we do what we do here. Okay? That's why we do
Fahrenheit
what we do here.
451.
Yes.
Correct? Isn't that the book, Fahrenheit 451? But did you get a drawing last week? I'm just curious. I got something laid on me heavy. I didn't have time last week to call in. But did you get anything?
From you? No.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Try to send it again. kpft@politicsandright.com. Okay?
Okay. All right. I'm out of here.
Thanks, you, brother. Bud. You have a good one. Anyway, folks.
I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right. It's now 6:26, and I'm just going to start saying what the program is supposed to be about, and we can blame Brother Jack for it. Jack, you're officially...
Get back in your cranny. Jack, stop messing with Egberto's show. Get over there in your cranny and stop it.
No, but really, I'm honored. I just love, this is what we have to do, right? I can have all kind of stuff that I want to talk about, but these are things that are in people's mind. And that's why I like when people call as well. I want to talk about what's in folks' minds so that we can actually lay the playing field. But today's topic is called Bernie Scolds Netanyahu. A few journalists get the protest right, and Republican voting for Biden. And I have 4 videos that I'm not going to play because, again, of Jack. But always remember, you can go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter and watch the videos that you normally hear here whenever I get a chance to play them. And the number is 713-526-5738, extension number 2 to speak right away. Again, that is 713-526-5738. You can call now, but what I want, there's one piece that I want folks to hear about the Bernie Sanders reaction to Netanyahu calling out the students. But before I go there, I want to preamble something because, I turn on Morning Joe and they're really hitting up these students and showing the comparison of what these students are talking about with the Vietnam War. And Joe said, there has to be adults in the room, etc., etc., etc. It turns out the students who were protesting the Vietnam War, it turns out they were the adults in the room. It turns out McNamara was lying to the American people. It turns out that all the things that these kids were concerned about in Vietnam and trying to reason for getting us out was right. It turned out Muhammad Ali, when he spoke about why he wasn't fighting the Vietnam War, and said was correct. So when and I like Morning Joe, he's a good conservative, but he's bought the Kool-Aid. When they talk about how wrong, and he was excited to show how similar a young 19-year-old kid talking about Vietnam sounded to some of these kids. We call them kids, but 19 years old. At 19 years old, I was doing a lot, man. I was over here living by myself, left my country in Panama to come here, just by myself in Texas. Now, here's the deal, guys. These kids are right. They are using an anti-Semitism trope. Anti-Semitism is real. There are provocateurs in there that are promoting anti-Semitism. But there are 2 different unrelated items. I tell you, I got a supporter yesterday that came on to support my program yesterday. And it touched me. And let me tell you why it touched me. She continued, she came on and supported the program, and she said, Egberto, you have to do some more learning about Israel. You have to do, and she in the commentary when she started her support, and then she said, but I like the way you entertain the conversation and you bring everybody in and you make sure that everybody's a part of the discussion. I am supporting that. And she said, I need to learn more about the entire Israeli issue, which I continue to learn and study about. I got another conservative that called in and he said, I'm supporting you because I don't agree with you on XYZ, but dang, I get a chance to say my part and put this information out there. And the reason I brought that up is the following. We have to entertain all sides, brothers and sisters. When I say all sides, we have to get what's in people's minds so that we can either learn or correct. Again, notice what I didn't just say, I am going to be here talking, you're going to tell your part, and I'm going to teach you something. That's not how it works. It works by me saying, I think I know, I think I'm right. And I think there's a lot that can show that. But, I could be, I may have missed this. And you may be here to say, hey, guy, you missed this. On which case, it's not a shame, it's not an embarrassment to say, this is what dialogue does. And by trying to shut out those students who are making the case, the Palestinian case, etc., it is wrong. It is terrible. It is, I could go on, but let's go to Johnny. I did enough talking. Come on in, brother Johnny. Mayor of Politics Done Right. They'll read you up in a minute. Johnny, come on in.
You ready?
You're here now, Johnny. Talk to me.
Okay. So anyway, you're talking about children versus young adults, and then I immediately thought of Don Jr. When Don Jr., when you see him on TV and you hear him talking and you look at his mannerisms, I think of a child, as opposed to these young people at Columbia University and UT. Those are young adults. They're young adults, young people, as opposed to children. We use the word children technically for people that are the progeny of, the parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could still be a child, you're 40 years old. But when I think of children, I think of young kids. Like, he made me do it. That kind of a child. That maturity level is Donald Trump Jr. Yes. As opposed to young adults, the responsible people, both back in the day when we were kids, and we had our older cousins who were protesting the war, and Ronald Reagan called my cousins spoiled brats. The world are run by people that are ultimately ironic, and that's what's sad and angering and frustrating. And the sad part about it is by the time people figure this out, they're too old to care, and then they're in a nursing home before you realize it. We have to do a better job of educating our kids and trusting that they are more mature and they can handle the truth way better than we are led to believe. Tell your kids what they want to know. When they're asking you, that's the good time to tell them. If they have questions about sexuality and reproduction, tell them. You know your kids better than anybody. Certainly Donald Trump doesn't know his kids at all. That's why they're children.
Thank you, brother. You're absolutely right. And I tell you what, I tell people, and I really mean this, I can learn from a toddler. I can learn certain things from a toddler. So look, let me tell you, guys, it is great. But let's go to Anonymous. Come on in, Anonymous. Line number 1.
Monday, right?
Yes. How you doing?
Oh, good. So, about colonial, like British colonialism or East Indies, or you might know about
of course.
And we know about the South Indies, Cecil Rhodes, South Africa. These areas were all commandeered back in the day by the British. When they conquest, they would turn that area, like the corporation, East Indies Corporation, into an LLC. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. So the conquest would turn into a corporation. Some say, the Organic Act in 1873 is, the replacement of the Constitution of the United States. Constitution with a corporation. Anyway, the point is, would be the conquest that Belford gave to Lord, you know what I'm saying, was a corporation. It was a 75-year LLC. That corporation expired October 31st, 2023. So the fractured wars around Central Asia are what we're witnessing, but I'll leave you one more thing. These are fun facts. These aren't opinions. When the Don, before he left office and he wanted to be competitive during COVID, he deregulated most all remaining industries. This included maritime port authorities. So do you remember those long lines, like they said, a mile of boats off of LA port, San Pedro? And do you remember the miles of lines on the toll lanes to take export out that were, so we didn't have commerce going in or going out. Do you remember that? It was over a year, actually.
I remember all of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, Buttigieg was breastfeeding his adopted son with his husband with a prosthetic chest. So even though we can make these slanders, the point is that if the maritime ports were regulated, even during a supposed pandemic, they would have to stay open. And guess what? When the next president came in, those regulations weren't changed, nor were the tax cuts. So you're right. These are very high level money. They create these systems. And it's really neat to watch the, what's it called, the microcosms of, interruption of commerce, and we blame everybody. So you guys were talking about it earlier, just look up, and see that,
Anonymous, thank you, my brother. Thank you for listening.
Part of it. Bye.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for your thoughts, my brother. Look, it is important. By the way, there's something that I want to talk about that Anonymous mentioned. There was a time that a corporation was created with a lifespan to do a certain piece of work, and then it came out of existence. What am I saying? I want you to think about this. Oil companies and other companies have a permanent existence in the form that they are. Remember, the reason you form corporations is that this corporation becomes a legal entity, another human being, if you will. And that other human being has its own social security number, known as an EIN. It also has rules that it follows. And if it can exist, it can die, it can go bankrupt. All these things are supposed to be able to happen. Now, I want you to ponder something. If we kept that modal, a corporation could come into existence, do its 20 years of the research to do a particular good, and after that has been materialized and standardized, it gets turned over to the public. That is how it should work, right? It shouldn't be that somebody can profit from the spoils of your country, your earth, ad infinitum because they originally did it or something like that, even though it's their resources that belong to us all. But again, most of what occur in our country, in every country, is because there's so little that we know about how things work that we allow ourselves to be exploited, and we allow ourselves to exploit each other, or we allow ourselves to look down at each other, because if we're doing that, we're not actually looking at those that are causing the problem. I told you I wanted you to hear the Bernie Sanders speech. It's about 9 minutes long. So let me go ahead and play that now. And then after that, we'll go ahead and take calls for the remainder of the program. Here we go. Ahora mismo comenzamos. Let's see. Let me get that going right this minute. I think that's it. No, that's not it. It is there, there, and there. Netanyahu seems to believe that he controls the United States government, and with that, the people in the United States, and that if they somehow go against him, he has the right to rebuke them. Recently, he called all the people protesting what's going on in Gaza anti-Semitic. This war criminal murdering people in Gaza to the order of over 35,000 people has the nerve to complain about Americans who have humanity in seeing that no leader should be ethnic cleansing as Netanyahu is doing. It is uncalled for, is horrendous, and it's a disrespect to the people whose tax dollars are being used to fund this guy's murder of Palestinians. Now, here's the thing. Bernie Sanders, who has the right to talk about these issues in more detail than most of us, because again, Bernie Sanders is a Jewish senator, a senator of Jewish descent, who has relatives that died in the Holocaust. He has a right to talk about these issues. And when a Bernie Sanders come one step beyond, or one step before calling what Netanyahu is doing a genocide by calling it ethnic cleansing, which pretty much is one of the forms of genocide, he calls it out definitively in this piece today. Listen to this, then we'll take it on the other side.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this week that college protests in the U.S. are being led by, quote, anti-Semitic mobs. You responded by accusing him of, quote, attempting to distract us from the immoral and illegal war policies of your extremist and racist government. And you said, quote, it is not anti-Semitic to hold you accountable for your actions. Senator, can't both things be true? There are legitimate criticisms of the Netanyahu government, but some of these protests have also clearly tapped into a deep undercurrent of anti-Semitism.
Donna, anti-Semitism is a vile and disgusting ideology which has resulted in the deaths of many, many millions of people in the last 100 years. And we've got to oppose it in every form. And do I doubt for a moment that anti-Semitism exists and is growing in the United States? That is part that exists among some people in the protest movement, of course. But here is the reality. Right now, what Netanyahu's right-wing, extremist, and racist government is doing is unprecedented in the modern history of warfare. They have killed, in the last 6.5 months, 33,000 Palestinians, wounded 77,000, 2/3 of whom are women and children. They have destroyed over 60% of the housing. They have destroyed the healthcare system. They have destroyed the infrastructure, no electricity, very little water. And right now, we are looking at the possibility of mass starvation and famine in Gaza. When you make those charges, that is not anti-Semitic. That is a reality. So our job is to condemn Hamas, a terrorist organization that started this war, condemn in every form anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of bigotry. But we do have to pay attention to the disastrous and unprecedented humanitarian disaster taking place in Gaza right now. Netanyahu is trying to do, very clearly, is to say, anybody who criticizes what Israel is doing, you are anti-Semitic. Well, are there some anti-Semites? Yeah. But what I'm saying is, if you look at the polling, the vast majority of the American people are disgusted with Netanyahu's war machine in Gaza, and they do not want further U.S. military aid to his government.
I've gotten texts from students, one in Michigan in particular, who said that he has to take his Jewish star off because people aren't asking him about his view on Israel, which is might be just like yours.
All right. I'm Jewish. Mm-hmm. All right. My father's family was wiped out by Hitler. Anti-Semitism is a disgusting and vile form of bigotry which has killed millions of people. Mm-hmm. I would hope that every American condemns anti-Semitism. We condemn Islamophobia and all forms of bigotry from what he is doing in Gaza right now, which is, in terms of humanitarian disaster, unprecedented in modern American history. 5% in 6.5 months, 5% of the population has been killed or wounded, 2/3 of whom are women and children. And Netanyahu has got to be held accountable for those actions.
Senator, I do want to ask you about something that your friend and colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, said when she visited Colombia this week and she supported the protests.
All Jewish kids should be kept safe and that we should not have to tolerate anti-Semitism or bigotry for all Jewish students, whether they are pro-genocide or anti-genocide.
Well, I don't know exactly. Look, what I think the essential point that Ilhan made is that we do not want to see anti-Semitism in this country. And I think the word genocide is something that is being determined by the International Court of Justice. But this is what I will say. I don't think there's any doubt that what Netanyahu is doing now, displacing 80% of the population in Gaza, is ethnic cleansing. That's what it is. Pushing out huge numbers of people. And now we're looking at the possibility of an attack on Rafah, where people have gone for so-called as a safety zone. So what's going on there, again, to my mind, is outrageous. And as you've indicated, I strongly oppose U.S. funding for Netanyahu's war machine.
Okay. One last question. I know that you said that to President Biden, that you were very concerned about the U.S. continuing to send aid and weaponry to Israel. What was his response?
I'm not going to talk about the personal conversations I have with the president, but I just would say that I think I and a majority of the American people do not want to be complicit in the humanitarian disaster that Netanyahu is causing in Gaza right now.
Look, Bernie Sanders nails it. Our students who are protesting against what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza, I mean, I'm talking about our regular Christian students, Jewish students, Muslim students, they're all working together. They are working together against that murderer in Israel. And Netanyahu thinks he has the right to tell our kids about their morality when what they are doing is the humane thing. Come on, folks, wake up. Your eyes are not deceiving you. The comparison between Gaza and Tel Aviv is not an illusion. You see systematic destruction of one place. As he said, well, they're sending rockets at us. They're doing bad things. But remember, this is a conflict from the inception of the state of Israel that has always had several sides. But Netanyahu, the ones who supported with our bombs, want to bully himself to simply, it's amazing how we have, whenever you're pointing a finger, how many are pointing back. He loves to talk about whenever Rashida Tlaib talks about from the river to the sea, which what she means is we all used to live in harmony before. That's what it should be. But nope. When he says that, he means blowing the smithereens out of folks who are currently there and not giving them the opportunity to exist. That's Benjamin Netanyahu. That's Bibi Netanyahu. That's what we're talking about.
We spend a lot of time.
Now, let me say this, because this is very important. There are 3 points. First, have you seen what they did with Ilhan Omar's statement? She said that all Jewish students need to be safe, whether pro-genocide or anti-genocide, right? In other words, she's saying, she goes to the extremes and she says, I don't care what this Jewish student believes. We must protect them. They have a right that we mustn't be anti-Semitic with them. And the media tries to, she said something that is wrong. She said every Jewish student must be protected. But notice how they try to spin that. Another piece that I intended to play was from Hylton, a journalist. Her name is Antonia Hylton. She was on the campus of the Columbia campus and others, right? And what the mainstream media is putting out there in the aggregate is wrong. They are trying to make it look like it's all these that this movement is against Jewish students, etc., etc., etc. It couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. Are they out there? Are there provocateurs in there, threatening Jewish student? Absolutely. Just like when I was on campus at the University of Texas, marching for the liberation for the University of Texas to divest from South Africa, we had all those N words used, and import using all kinds of words being thrown at us during those protests. Of course, there is anti-Semitism. It's real. But that's not what the movement is about. The movement is there, and you can watch Jewish students with the Star of David. You can watch Muslim students. You can watch Christian students, all with their own stuff out there in the encampment that are there for one thing: humanity. Stop killing people. Stop killing innocent people. All religions are a part of this movement. But the media is trying to make it seem otherwise. It's a fallacy. And that's why the work of Antonia Hylton, the work of Mark Thompson, who I played his interview that I did with him from Columbia University last week, we have to get the voices of those telling the truth out, because there is orchestration in misinforming you out there. There's orchestration in trying to keep you uninformed, because an uninformed American is an American we can control. All right, let's go to Brian. Come on in, Brian. My brother Brian, how are you doing? Brian, you're on. Okay. Did we lose Brian studio? Because I can't hear Brian.
No, we didn't lose him. He's there somewhere.
Well, Brian, you must be on mute. But if you don't come on in a minute, I'll finish the program with the. I don't have enough time for another video, so I'm going to ask one more time. Brian, are you there?
Is Brian asleep?
I think Brian is asleep.
Well, he can call back.
Yeah, Brian, you can call back. I mean, we try to get you on anyway. So folks, it is. Look, the other three videos was the police overreaction at UT and other places. In fact, there was a video out where the cop, a young professor, she is not doing anything, and the video is clear. And this police just slammed her to the ground, faced into the concrete. I mean, if you think a police state, we condemn Venezuela when we see cops rough up people a certain way. I mean, it is no different than what we see when you are dissenting. I mean, the way the cops threw that thin woman, just threw her like a rag doll to the ground. It was shameful, and that image is going to reverberate not just here in America, but throughout the world. And when we go and try to be morally superior to any other place, that's all they're going to do. Have a montage of how we treat our people, Let's not be fooled into thinking that the rest of the world doesn't see what we are doing. And if you think that this type of behavior is not going to get worse, let's give Donald Trump a toehold, because you know what he tells the cops to do. For people that disagrees with him, tell the cop to bang him up. His words, we don't even have to say that, well, we think Trump's going to do that. He have already told them to do it. This is where we've gone, folks. This is where we've gone. Anyway, we're almost done with the program. I don't have any more. I can't play any more videos because I'm out of time. So go to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter to see the other videos. I mean, they're very good videos. I mean, to check it out on this topic and on the topic of a Republican having a change of heart who's voting completely Democrat in the next election. But by the way, I had a very successful weekend. I feel productive. I turned my latest book into a audiobook. So all 5 of my books now also have their corresponding audiobooks. So I'm like, I am happy as hell. Now I'm working on the 6th one. So anyhow, let's go to the studio where we have our resident geniuses.
Is your book, the audio book, is it narrated by Boris Karloff?
Well, I did.
Ladies and gentlemen,
man, I wish I had gotten you to do it, man. You should have done it,
Boris
man.
Boris Karloff reads Politics Done Right. Once upon a time, there was a man who came from Jamaica. This man saw opportunity in America. He took that opportunity and made something of himself. And today you can hear him on the radio at KPFT Houston. That's about all I got.
No, you see, you guys see why I love that guy? But by the way, I love him so much, even if he got my country wrong. I'm Panama. I do have Jamaican in me, but I'm from Panama. Yes,
he came from Panama, saw opportunities, and he handed the microphone over to Jack.
My question is Netanyahu the most anti-Semitic person I know?
Oh. Yeah. Oh, I like.
Is he the anti-Semite?
Antichrist now.
You remember what we always talk about? If you're pointing a finger, there are 4 more pointing back at you. I hear the music. Hey, folks, let me tell you. Love you all. Thank you for your calls. Thank you for your ears. We're going to keep this up. We are going to have a great time. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.